Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Centurion Leadership Battalion podcast, your source of accountability, inspiration, and motivation to become your best and reach your fullest potential every day. Our motto, it's simple: to use our determination to crush our everyday leadership tasks so that we dominate in our delivery of services and products to our clients and achieve victory and personal growth, profitability, and creating environments for those around us to prosper. Let's get this show started.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Centurion Leadership Battalion podcast. This is your host, Alaina. We are here for a Win on Wednesday episode. Today, I'm doing a solo podcast. We do not have Justin with us today, but we are going to have some great content surrounding our core value number 4, lead through action and by example. So for today's Win on Wednesday, it'll be a little of a shorter episode. These are a little different than our Q&A episodes. If you have yet to listen to those, we are typically doing Q&A episodes here, but we are tying in a few other styles of episodes to give you guys more value. We really appreciate all the ratings and reviews you leave for us, whether that's on Spotify or on iTunes, wherever you choose to listen. We greatly appreciate it. You can also connect with us on social media at Centurion Leadership Battalion. So for today's Win on Wednesday episode, I want to cover something regarding leading by example, right? I want to talk about what happens when you fail to lead by example. It's really easy to throw out a bunch of leadership, really cliches, and you're always supposed to be leading by example. You're always supposed to set the tone for your team, all these things, but we are human and we do fail. We are not perfect, as people or as leaders. So how do we handle when we slip up? How do we handle when we fail? How do we handle when we don't set the example or the tone for our team that we want to? Maybe as a leader, at times you have gotten really short-tempered with your team. Maybe you have made a business decision that totally ended up being a failure and cost your team a ton of money. Maybe you have made decisions that have led to even brands nearly falling out and failing. There are so many different ways that you can lead as a leader that you are not proud of. And I think that we should normalize that a little bit. We talk a lot about failing forward, always being willing to own and learn from your mistakes, all of these things. But I think it's really important to normalize that because we are humans. Just because we are leaders or pouring into self-development or really working to be the best versions of ourselves doesn't mean we're going to do it perfectly. Even the most perfect leader that we look up to on social media, we watch on TV, maybe on Shark Tank, whatever it might be for you, those leaders have even made bad business decisions. If we're talking about leading inside of our homes, I think a lot of us can admit that we've failed in that way as well. Maybe you have gotten short-tempered with your partner after you've had a really long day and snapped at them. Or maybe you have had a very, very little patience with your kids and yelled when that's something you don't want to do and set in the culture of your home. There are so many ways as human beings that we fail and falter from the versions of ourselves that we want to be. And I think that that's okay. I think when we hold ourselves to a standard of perfection, that is when we feel this enormous pressure. And I think a lot of times that enormous pressure leads to, very monumental leaders and celebrity leaders even who you hear, go off the deep end, go bankrupt, who knows, have an affair, whatever it might be. I think when we put this enormous amount of pressure on ourselves or on our leaders or on our mentors or the people that, are looking up to us, and we put that pressure within ourselves, we are bound to break. We need to be more willing to be graceful with ourselves and to really accept that we're human beings. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to mess up along the way. I think that, it's important to realize that in any scenario, whether you're talking about as a leader or a boss or a manager in your business, as a creator on social media, as an influencer, right? As a parent, as a husband, as a wife, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, a partner, a daughter, a son, whatever it might be. There's so many times we're going to feel like we're failing others around us and that we're failing ourselves. And so many times where we make a decision in an instant that we look back on and we wish we could just hit rewind on the clock and go do it again because it ended up being a total mistake. And it flopped and it didn't work out the way we wanted it to. There are so many times that things like this are going to happen, and you have to learn to be graceful with yourself. Like I said, just because you're a leader, just because you are pouring into yourself doesn't mean you're going to get it perfect, and that's okay. So how do we come back from that? That's what we want to talk about today. How do we handle those times that we don't lead by example, that we don't set the tone for the way we want our team to act? And we really think if my whole team acted like I just acted, this entire business, brand, whatnot, household would fail, right? How do we come back from that? So I think a lot of times in leadership with managers, traditionally in history, it's known that, your manager is never wrong, right? Your manager never admits they're wrong. You see this played out in TV shows and movies. The person in charge never wants to be wrong. They call the shots. At the end of the day, it's their word against yours. Even if they're dead wrong and everyone knows it, no one calls them out for it. No one holds them accountable. There's no self accountability with them. There are so many ways this plays out, right? Especially as a child, maybe you grew up with parents who were this very authoritative. They were never wrong. They never admitted they were wrong. They never said they were sorry. I know for me, I'm not a parent technically yet because I am still pregnant, but I don't want to have a household where I never admit that I'm wrong to my children, right? If I make a mistake or I handle something or I'm short-tempered, I want to be able to come back and say, you know what? I am so sorry that I acted like this, or I'm sorry, this mistake or this decision was a mistake. I led us in the wrong direction with this choice. I thought I was doing what was right. Turns out it wasn't. And I'm sorry. I'm owning that. I really want to be able to own my mistakes. That's really important to me. And I think that should be really important to everyone in every form of leadership, not just being a parent. If you are leading a team and you make a mistake, I think the first step is really just acknowledging to your team that you made a mistake. Don't hold yourself to a standard of perfection as to yourself and especially to your team, because then you're going to set this tone and this undercurrent that you're unapproachable, that you're never wrong. That if your team sees something or project going in a wrong direction and they know that you never admit to being wrong or doing things, the wrong way or the hard way or whatnot, they're never going to bring it to your attention, right? So what if you make a mistake as a leader because you're overseeing a million different things? So you make one small mistake, you tell your team, do things this way, X, Y, Z. Your team members, are in charge of that project and they start to notice, okay, this doesn't really make sense. This isn't really working. We were trained, we should do things this way, but they're scared to come to you and to say that to you because, you have set the tone that you're never wrong, that you're in charge, that it's what you say, that it goes, and that's all that there is to talk about. So then they end up finishing the project and the project fails. Well, whose fault was that, right? Because you didn't lead your team by example. And you also never set the tone that you could be wrong and that you could fail. So your team was scared to come to you. So I think the first step is always owning when you're wrong, not just to yourself, but also to your team members and showing them that it's okay to be wrong. When you show your team members that you, the person in charge, makes mistakes, they are more willing to admit their mistakes and come to you when they have messed something up or done something the wrong way or failed or whatever it might be. So setting the tone by saying, it's okay to be wrong. People make mistakes. We're all human is the first step. And as we talk about with this core value, leading by example, that is how we do that. We set the tone. How we handle our failures is how we expect our team members, our children, our spouse to handle their failures. Gosh. Are we expecting them to brush it under the rug and keep it hidden from us? Or do we want them to be able to come to us, authentically, as we talk about in our other core values, being authentic and being honest and having integrity and saying, I messed this up. I'm owning this. I apologize for my share in this. That is what we want. And then how do we come back from that? In our episode where we explored core value number 4, we talked about resilience and having resilience as a leader. How do we come back when we failed? What are we going to show our team? That we throw the towel in, that we refuse to be wrong, that if we're wrong, we don't admit it and we just keep going, we keep chugging along? Or do we own it and we take the steps to make it better? I think that's what we want to show our teams. That's what we want to show our families. That's what we want to show our followers. I was wrong. I was misinformed. I was not educated enough on this subject, or I was, and I made a rash decision and I'm owning it and I'm sorry. And here are the steps we take to make this better. Those two things really go hand in hand, owning it and then the actions that we take. And I think that serves as a good reminder for everyone. We all will fail. We all will falter, but that doesn't have to be the end of the story. Whether we're talking about within our family or we're talking about within our teams or our businesses, we can learn from that. We can fail forward. We always talk about here. As a leader, you are going to fail. If you're not willing to fail, don't be a leader and don't start a business. Don't start a brand. Don't be a parent. If you are not willing to fail, probably shouldn't do very much. Shouldn't set the bar very high, because the higher you set the bar, the more you're going to fail. And that's just the way that life is. We have to own it when we fail. We have to acknowledge it to those on our teams and our families, whatever it is. And we have to own those mistakes and take the steps to make them better, to learn from them, to fail forward. So what if the project doesn't end up getting finalized or being under budget? So what that we've made this mistake that our kids might remember? What our kids are going to look back on and say, mom made a mistake, but she owned it. She apologized. She took ownership of the mistake that she made, and she turned around and did better. Our teams are not going to think, oh my gosh, our manager, our boss totally blew it. How embarrassing. I don't want to follow a leader like this. No, they're going to think and say, wow, even the expert made a mistake, and look how he or she handled it. He or she owned it. He or she educated himself, acknowledged it to the team, and then took steps to lead us in a better way. I hope that this gives someone the freedom to realize it's okay to mess up, to take that pressure off, because when you're under so much pressure, eventually you will combust. Being a leader, being a parent, being a spouse, whatever it might be, being a human is enough pressure. It's time we take that the pressure for perfection off of ourselves, realize we can only do so much. There's grace for what we can't. There's grace for our failures. And give that grace to ourselves, give that grace to our teams, give that grace to our families and our households, and set this undercurrent of leading by example and being the kind of leader that we want to be and the kind of person we want to have within our teams and within our homes. I hope that this episode has helped. A little quick, short, to the point win on Wednesday. Hope you'll have a great rest of your week. And I'd love to hear any feedback from this episode. As always, you can email us, connect with us on social media, whatever is best for you. Thanks, guys.